It's time for Mad Rewind, yeah, with your host, Brandee Stillwell.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Mad Rewind. Dear lovers of everything comedy and hilarious, do I have a treat for you today? I have a fantastic human being and somebody that I am now claiming to be my friend, whether he likes it or not. Deal with it. Today I have Mr. Orlando Jones. Hello, Orlando.
What's happening, Brandee? What's going on?
I'm so thankful you agreed to come on Mad Rewind. I appreciate it.
Of course, absolutely. Mad TV, what a chapter.
Where you're currently filming somewhere. I don't think we can say where you're filming, but where are you at the moment?
I'm in Brooklyn.
Okay, very nice.
Yes. I'm enjoying it. New York is behind me, and I'm hanging out at the water on Brooklyn. It's my day off, so I'm glad everything worked out so I could catch up with you.
Oh, thank you. This is going to be a great conversation. So I'm just going to go ahead and jump in, and we'll get the conveyor belt rolling.
Okay.
So, fans of Mad TV, as an original cast member and writer, Orlando Jones appeared in the first 2 seasons of Mad TV, appearing in 43 episodes from 1995 to 1997. Some of his impressions included Bill Cosby, O.J. Simpson, Dennis Rodman, Ice Cube, Ike Turner, and Andre 3000, to name a few. Original characters included Ivan Hicks from Lowered Expectations. Oh my God, Ivan. Beaten down husband Robert from That's My White Mama. Empowerment plan host Toby Robbins. Cabana Chat band leader Dexter St. Croix. It's Croix, right?
Yes, St. Croix. Yes, Dexter.
Yes. Reverend Lamont, Nixon, Fatback, and Curly Dog.
Yes.
Orlando has also appeared on Sleepy Hollow, Black Dynamite, Swagger, Raven's Home, American Gods, as Martin Eddy on Abbott Elementary, and also on Family Business, New Orleans on BET and Netflix. Orlando has also appeared in feature films like Office Space, The Replacements, Drumline, Time Machine, Biker Boys, Trouble Man, and the upcoming feature Live to Die. He has also lent his voice to Father of the Pride, Halo 2, and Halo 2 Anniversary. Please welcome Orlando Jones. Yay!
Parade wave.
That arsenal is fantastic. Look at you. So impressive. I'm going to dive right in. Orlando, when did you know you were funny?
Oh, I think in class. I think I might have figured it out in class. Maybe I think that was probably 3rd grade, Mrs. Perillo's class. It was the moment.
And because you were also a writer, I'm going to add in the other question to you is when did you know that you're like, I can be a writer as well? I know that might be time jump, but I still want to know while I'm here.
I think writing sort of just became it was a function of necessity more than anything. Like that, it wasn't like, and nobody was writing roles for 16, 17-year-old kids, let alone 16, 17-year-old Black kids from the South. That role didn't exist. Maybe a kid from New York or LA or whatnot. So there was a desire for material, and so I thought, who better to write it than myself? And I think writing is something you do. I don't think it's something that someone must bestow upon you. I just sort of jumped in, and I got a job writing on for NBC in A Different World very early on, so it was successful for me. But I jumped in previously to that.
Okay. So growing up, did you have family members that were funny, that inspired you, or that you wanted to make them laugh?
I think it was always a function of making my mom laugh. Was I think part of it. But my mom is pretty funny. My dad is a very funny, very charismatic dude. There are lots of people I think around who were. My grandmother was also a very charismatic figure. So I think I was surrounded in family members who were funny and charismatic and whatnot. But I was watching for a while. and also I think developing my own sense of humor, which is very different than theirs.
Okay. Did you ever make fun of your parents? Because I did mine all the time, and then I knew I could get away with things.
Oh yeah, of course. Oh yeah, I torture them all the time. I still do. There's no, but yeah, that's what you do with family. I mean,
Exactly.
they call that love, I believe. that's the four-letter word.
Who were your comedy heroes when you were a kid?
I really liked different people for different reasons. So I loved W.C. Fields. I love his cadence was really funny to me. I liked let's see, Lenny Bruce's brashness. I sort of enjoyed Shelley Berman. I thought as a writer was interesting. Steve Martin was very goofy. Bill Cosby was a really wonderful storyteller. Richard Pryor, Red Fox, Moms Mabley was probably one of my absolute favorites. And I really loved comedy, so and I had all of those albums, so I really listened to a lot of it, and with my friends and whatnot, and we had our favorites. But at that time, it was about records and CDs and stuff that you got your hands on, and you would listen to it.
So when you would be listening to these albums with friends, would you start doing impressions of them?
Yeah, I mean, I could definitely do all the voices for sure. Depending on. I mean, Cosby was probably the most fun to do, just because of the nature of how he speaks. He has a particular cadence, particularly when he's in performance mode. It's almost like he sings, "I did not want to deal," and also the way he uses different tones in a story. Bothering with you, like he really does use a range of different sounds to get you giggling and in sort of the spirit of the laugh. He's like brilliant at that. So those were the ones.
Okay. Were you like a theater kid or an improv kid, or can you explain to me your comedy education journey and who sent you on that path?
I was always just kind of joking around with my friends, family or what have you. And obviously, when we were in camp, or I was always in the singing group or some group. But theater, at least during my very young years, was not really what happened. I was more into sports, to be honest with you. And
what sports did you play?
I ran track and I played basketball.
Okay.
Played football a couple years, and baseball was my dad's sport, so I sort of avoided that. I had a public speaking teacher. Her name was Gladys Robertson, and Gladys, she's the only teacher I ever had that cursed, and she basically told me that I was going to sit down and shut the F up and do what she said do. And she wanted me to be on the debate team. And that's how I wound up on the debate team. And then I won the national championship. And so that sort of catapulted, Yale drama and drama school offers and all that kind of stuff. And I think she was probably the person that understood it in a way that I didn't. And she was adamant. And so I performed the Butter Battle book by Theodore Seuss Geisel, Dr. Seuss, and Dick Gregory has a wonderful book called Nigger. And those are my two performances. And so, yeah, that kind of opened the door, and it took off from there.
Okay. I love it. Did she ever know that you became successful and how? And
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, because when I left and started writing on A Different World, I was still a teenager, and I'd already had my ad agency before then. So my commercials were running. My McDonald's, Michael Jordan, McJordan's commercial was running. My Food Lion commercial was running. And a Mazda commercial. So I had various ads that were already running regionally or nationally already. So,
okay.
and while I was writing on A Different World, and I spent my first 5 years writing and producing sitcoms, I wrote the pilot of Martin and Martin Lawrence's show. So while I was doing that, I was behind the scenes, but I was still doing all my commercial stuff.
And so is that what you were doing when you got, because wasn't there like a cattle call, like a national wide cattle call for Mad TV? Is that what you were doing when you found out about the audition for it?
I was, there was a new network that I had launched called FX, and we had launched it out of New York. And I was just leaving FX actually, because I'd done the show, I'd launched my show. It was fun and I had a good time, but I was like, I don't want to do this forever. And I decided, and I went into audition for Mad TV. But yeah, I think there was like 160 people there, something crazy. And
wow.
and that was how I started. And I was out in LA for the weekend and took my car out of storage, and I drove to this Mad TV audition while I was staying at my buddy's house.
Okay. So before I go back to Mad, or before I really get into Mad TV,
Okay.
can you share with me your experience on how you landed your first writing job on A Different World?
Sure. I was in college, and I had my ad agency and was doing pretty well with that. And I had an opportunity. I got flown out to Los Angeles to be on a television show called 227 and to play an actor on that show. And when I came out and did my test for network, I met with a manager, and the manager mentioned to me that they were looking for young writers for the new season of A Different World, and asked me to write a spec script. I did. They flew me out to meet with the two executive producers, and they hired me in the room. And then I moved out to California, and that was that. So that's how I got my writing job on A Different World. Susan Fales and Deborah all hired me as a writer.
Oh, wow. That is, I'm always in awe of everyone's journey on how they evolved and how they got to one place to another, and just the mechanics of that. So thank you. So kind of now jumping into Mad TV, you said that, you had all of these people there and it was like a madhouse. Do you remember what the audition process was like for you?
Yeah, I remember, I think it was Deborah Langford and Quincy Jones, and then I think it was Fax and Adam, the two showrunners, and then the casting director or something. And, I remember I just didn't want to read with the casting director. They kind of gave you the material, and I was like, I don't want to read with this, casting director. So I was like, look, I'll just do all of the characters, and then, and that's my audition. So that's what I did. And they're like, very funny. And Quincy Jones said, do you do any more other characters? And I said, well, why don't you just toss the character out and then I'll just do it? And so he laughed and he was like, East Coast rapper, West Coast rapper, old man, whatever. So he threw out, I think, those three or something like that. And I did those three, and, he was laughing hysterically. And then Deborah Langford knew me as a writer from A Different World, and Rock Live and the Sinbad Show and whatnot. And so she was like, would this be interesting to you? Because I know you wrote and produced situation comedies, and this is a sketch comedy show. And I said, yeah, and I love Mad Magazine. I grew up with Mad Magazine. It was, my favorite magazine as a kid, Spy versus Spy. Sergio Aragonés as an artist. It was, to me, amazing. No sacred cows. It was everything I wanted. It's like a rebellion in a magazine. So that was that. And they hired me, and that I was in the original 8, and that's how I got there. It's crazy.
Now, did you know Quincy before this audition, or did you meet him there?
No, I didn't know Quincy before then. No, I met him in that audition.
Oh, okay. And so now that you have landed Mad TV, would you mind doing some of your character voices? Like the Cabana Chat band leader, Dexter St. Croix, or Ivan Hicks.
Well, hold on. I'm so sorry. It's Dexter, first of all.
Okay.
St. Croix. St. Croix. Mm-hmm. Like the island, honey. Mm-hmm. Okay. I just didn't want you to, mess it up. Because some people, they don't know what to say. You know what I mean? They're so mesmerized by the music. Mm-hmm. That it is too much for them, because I know I'm spicy. I'm muy caliente. That goes without saying. But sometimes, seeing these areolas is too much.
I won't ask you to show the stomach.
Of course not. But I know you're nasty. I know you're thinking about it. You imagining. I see you. You know, the little bonnet around your hair. You ain't fooling nobody. No, we see you. Nasty. Mm-hmm. Got several porn accounts. I bet you do. Don't you?
What about Ivan Hicks from Lowered Expectations?
I'm Ivan. My favorite color is blue. My favorite fruit is orange. My favorite movie is baseball. I love Ivan. He's such a nerd.
He was adorable. And the Lowered Expectations sketches are just, they hold up. They hold up to this day.
They were probably the most fun. I have to admit. I had a drunk guy that I really loved doing. I remember, and all he was doing was dancing and belching, and then he throws up. That's all he did. In fact, I think he was dancing, going, "Look at what you got! Look at what you got! Look at." Just I really enjoyed the Baduda was another one I did. I am Baduda. Check this out. And he keeps doing it until, how do you like me now? That was the bit. It stuck longer. Wait. I got it.
I don't think you can still do it.
Oh my goodness. Don't you dare. How do you like me now? That was the Baduda. I love Lowered. It was, man, what a time.
Now, going back to your character that projectile vomited, was that like pea soup from like The Exorcist, or what? Was it practical, or was it a tube? How did they?
No, it was purely faked.
Okay.
Yeah, the whole notion of it to me was, there's always some guy at a party who has, who has literally just drank themselves into a fury.
Mm-hmm.
And they've belched and kind of thrown up, but they're so drunk they don't know it. Like they don't get it. And they're just dancing, having a good time at the party until the moment hits them and they have to run behind the sofa. And so then you could do the sound and really, you just got to do the, convulsion, you could really, make it sound like the guy is giving it up. So that was always the joke, was that just get to the sofa with enough force to make it feel like he really went crazy once he made it there, and then was stupid enough to upload that to his dating profile. Like, who's gonna look at that and be like, "Ooh, that guy, ooh, he's hot."
I want his number. Hello.
Right, exactly. No one wants his number. Absolutely no one.
Okay, so since you were an established sitcom writer before you came on Mad TV, how involved were you in the sketch writing process?
I was definitely involved because of the nature of. So basically, what we do is everybody would pitch their ideas, and then those ideas would get picked, and then you would go off and write it, and then before we shot it, everybody would sort of, you know, gang in and, you know, make changes. Faxman would approve the final changes. That's what went in the script and went out to the cast. But after the table read, the cast would then have to rehearse it. So we would put it on its feet. And of course, with John Blanchard, we would change it around. You know, a lot of times, you know, or state our objections or additions or what have you. And that was essentially the process of how the show got put together. The trick was to shut your mouth, was really the big trick, because, you know, the writers always complain about the actors and the actors always complain about the writers. And if you're in both rooms, you know what all the complaints are, but you can't tell anybody. So you just kind of have to be quiet. So that was most of my job, was just shutting up and trying to stay out of the way. But I didn't have a carte blanche to just do whatever I want. In fact, they mostly chose stuff that was for other people. So I actually didn't do a whole lot on the show. I think I probably did the least of the cast, because most of my contribution was on the writing side, I felt, earlier. And then the characters started to pop and that sort of happened. But at the time, I thought, you know, I didn't think my contribution as talent was very big at all.
Now, did you have a process for creating a character?
Well, I mean, there was always certain things that you would just see, but a lot of times in the sitcom writing process, one of the things that you quickly learn is, you know, there's a difference between how I'm funny and how you're funny. And if I'm writing for you, then my job is to kind of figure out how you're funny and figure out what your cadence is, which is different than my cadence, right? And so that's the central part of the sitcom writing process, is understanding your cast and how your cast delivers. Each one delivers a joke so that you're writing within their cadence. And then the second part of it is knowing that whomever the showrunner is has a very specific vision of the world and the characters. And your job is to kind of write in what they would have written so they don't have too much work between dealing with the studio and the network. So it's heavily about being able to mimic that writer and mimic these voices very, very well. So on Mad TV, it was very easy for me to lock into what other people were funny with and deliver that in a way that they could then take it and make it their own, because it was written in their rhythm. Right? So that skill as a writer served the cast better than me, but that's just the nature of this type of show, right? So that's just kind of the way it happened. And, you know, I was fine. I had a great time, and I loved my castmates. We had a lot of fun together.
Well, speaking of character building, we have arrived at the sponsor portion of the podcast, Mad Rewind.
By all means.
So this is for the Croix. The Croix is a comedy club located in the Bergamot Station Arts Center in Santa Monica. It also happens to be a super inclusive 501c3 nonprofit theater. I highly recommend catching a show, a class, an open mic, or even enrolling your kids in their summer comedy camp. No matter your age, there's a space there for you with their full comedy school for not only adults, but they also have comedy classes for teens and kids too. Or maybe you just want to go see a hilarious show at one of their two theaters. Basically work on your craft during the day and go laugh your ass off at night. So please visit crowcomedy.com for classes, shows, and tickets. Crow.
That's my crow sound. It's
Nailed
probably
it. Okay.
not even close. Somewhere there's a crow going, son of a bitch. I sound nothing like that.
I've been doing it wrong this entire time.
Right. Jesus. Calls himself a comic. How dare you? He's racist against crows. Right. They all agree.
He hates these cans.
Yes, he hates these pants. Hilarious.
When you can get a Steve Martin quote in, you got to take it.
From the jerk, of course. Yes.
Do you have a favorite sketch or character that you ever created?
You know, I enjoyed the Reverend Lamont Fatback.
Can you still do his voice?
Huh?
Can you still do his voice?
What was it? I think it was Amen and Amen. Praise Jesus. Hallelujah. The Reverend Lamont Lewis Fatback was a real pitch man. He really sold his soul to somebody. And he reminded me of the prosperity preachers that I encountered in the South, that it was like the ad sales was incorporated into the sermon. And it just made me, I just thought it was such a hilarious thing because it was clearly what was going on, right? And the product was TJ Mosley Cars Felice. That's why I put it in the sketch, because that's what I heard the Reverend pitch, TJ Mosley Cars Felice. And I fell out laughing. I literally was like, did anybody else hear what he just said? He just said TJ. What how does that, what does that have to do with Jesus? And I could not stop laughing. So I thought, man, a character who really takes that to the next level in every aspect of the sermon is, you know, he's got a product that he's plugging in the middle of his sermon, and, you know, the choir then does the big plug. It just made me giggle that he was constantly doing that. And so we did multiple of those. I think we did one where he was on trial, and the judge dismissed it because he was able to get hotel rooms in Waikiki for $99. You know, so I loved him. He was fun. Let me just think. I was probably more focused on, you know, I needed my Ike Turner to be really Lawrence Fishburne specific. And between the Samuel L. Jackson and then the Gump Fiction one was fun because it was a mashup. I'm doing Bubba Gump, but I'm also doing Samuel L. Jackson from Pulp Fiction. So, you know, he's like asking for shrimp with a jerry curl and a shotgun. Those were fun to create just because they're, you know, it wasn't a typical, I'm going to do an impression. It was like, I want to mash up two people. And because that was the whole thing, Gump Fiction, I'm like, oh, I'm going to take my character and make it a mashup too, right? And so that, you know, for me, that was probably the most fun because it wasn't what was normally done in sketch comedy, right? It was something a little left the center. And the Navajo preacher, the guy who buys the NFL teams and then changes all their names. I love that dude. You know, the chief, the Indian chief, had the whole thing. He had the whole look. He was hilarious. I liked him. Talked very, very, very straight the way he talked. Big booming voice. Very funny.
Do you have a favorite moment or moments that still stand out to you all of these years later after you've left Mad TV?
You know, I talked to my brother Artie Lang a lot, and we tend to race through a bunch of Mad TV memories in about a 15-minute call. That's our favorite thing to do. I mean, look, there are a number of things that I probably shouldn't admit to. You know, we may or may not have found ourselves in a situation where we were on Mount Rushmore. and the park was closing, and we left our mark there, and then I mean.
Federal, federal crimes, do tell.
Well, no, just we said a prayer and we went our merry way.
Okay.
I definitely have some crazy, hilarious memories of that entire cast. Traveling to press junkets on Rupert Murdoch's private jet, and just the hilarity of Nicole Sullivan and you know David Herman and just just the mix of all of us. It just was a madhouse, but a lot of truly hilarious because, as a group, we were a new show. Nobody really cared about us that much, but I think I have wonderful memories of that. I remember us shooting the promo for the very first episode, and I was doing my grandparents as characters. I vividly remember doing that on a Hollywood street. It was like, huh, I'm standing on Sunset Boulevard doing a sketch comedy show, doing my grandmother and my grandfather as characters. This is weird, but crazy. But I have a vivid memory of that.
Oh, I love that. That's fantastic. And did your grandparents, were they still alive? Were they able to see you do that? Did they see the sketch?
No. I do this Vietnam vet, and he's talking to himself, but he's talking to himself in an argument between my Aunt Dolly and my Uncle Cecil. And my Uncle Cecil has a stutter, and my Aunt Dolly would have whooped his ass immediately if he had said anything she didn't like. So he needed to have a stutter because he was not in a safe environment. So I do those two arguing with one another as this sort of Vietnam vet who's a little whacked out. My parents saw it and was like, what? They knew exactly who it was and obviously burst out laughing. But unfortunately, my Uncle Cecil and Aunt Dolly had passed by the time, by 1995, I think that was.
Okay. Do you have like a moment that that still stands out to you that you're really proud of that you accomplished when you were on Mad TV?
Oh God. Not really. I don't think that the way I think of being an artist in those terms. I think of being an artist as an evolution in many ways, and I think hopefully you continue to work at and hone your skill set. For me, being on Mad TV was a huge step because it was going from being predominantly behind the camera as a writer producer to really being predominantly in front of the camera, but also in front of the camera doing comedy. You know what I mean? So for me, it was that was the big evolution, and just being able to go from being a writing producer on the Sinbad show on Fox to, doing sound effects in New York and launching the FX network to going to a sketch comedy show. It was sort of three very different things within a period of time. And I was, very much, just trying to become better and more diverse as an artist. And I was fortunate and blessed that circumstances allowed me to do those different things. And, I never got pigeonholed. I was just really fortunate. But I don't think of it as an accomplishment, any of it. I still don't really feel like I've accomplished much of anything, actually. I feel more like I really feel like the best is yet to come. That's kind of how I see it.
I love that answer. That's solid. Did you ever have a sketch that you wrote or a character that you created rejected?
Oh yeah, 100%.
Do any of them stand out to you that it was like, how could they have not, like, why did they pass on this? It was brilliant.
I got in trouble for a couple of sketches. I got cussed out about a couple of impersonations.
Ooh.
And I got a couple of sketches cut, a couple censored and a couple total cut. Schindler's Lost got cut. Uh, the story of a man. Huh?
YouTube. You can find it on YouTube, kids. Google it.
I think you might be able to find it, actually. Yeah. Schindler's
Rare.
Lost, the story of a man with a sense of justice but no sense of direction. I thought that it was hilarious. So for me, great chuckle, but sadly pulled because someone said it was anti-Semitic. So that went away. That's when I got the call from Quincy Jones, like, stop it. Stop writing stuff that's problematic. And then I did a Bill Cosby sketch. And then I got called down to the office over that one. And I had to come. I thought I was going to see Bill Cosby because they said I was in trouble. But when I got there, it was just him on a speakerphone. And when I walk in, it's just a conference table and like a couple people standing in the back. And like I hear him say, "Is he here? Is he on?" And they're like, "Yes, Bill." And he goes, "I just want to know, were you making fun of me or the media?" And I was like, "The media?" And he was like, "Okay." And they were like, "Okay, you can go." And I was like, "That's it?" And I hadn't really thought about it, but I portrayed him as a pimp in a show called Cosby's Crib, because the story is that Cosby was never black enough, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so the joke is that Cosby finally answers his critics by doing this super black show where he's no longer a doctor and his wife's a lawyer. He's actually a drug dealer, and he is teaching his kids how to make money selling narcotics and not pay taxes. And then the critics say it's an amazing show and the whole thing. And he ultimately loses his mind at the press conference and goes after the critics for being so hypocritical that they now call this ridiculous show that he did, black enough. And that was the totality of the sketch. So we were obviously making fun of the media, but I didn't expect to get called down to the offices at William Morris and, and asked directly from the man himself. So, I was getting into trouble like that. And I pissed off Eddie Murphy because I made him a waiter in a Chinese restaurant trying to get a job on the Eddie Murphy story. But Spike Lee, who was directing it, wouldn't cast him because he had cast himself in the role. And Phil Lamont does a dead-on Spike Lee, just like a dead-on Spike Lee. Hilarious. But Eddie Murphy was furious with me over that. Furious. But, what could I say? Yeah, those are some of the good ones. I mean, if you didn't piss nobody off in our mind, you weren't doing it right. So
exactly. So when did you know it was time to leave Mad TV?
I think there's always a bit of an unholy alliance between people who are both writers and performers, because there comes a point where you find yourself consistently being asked to give away the writing part for free.
Mm.
And, there are so many wonderful writers that I have no problem hitting my mark and saying the lines on the page. In fact, I very much enjoy that. But often, particularly on the comedy side, you get asked to rewrite those jokes or put your spin on it, right? Which means you're rewriting it. And I really, when they asked me to do that on Mad TV, I was just like, I've been a Writers Guild member for a long time. I'm not comfortable letting you take credit for stuff I wrote.
Mm-hmm.
So that was really, I think, for me, the thing. And, I wasn't a cheap writer. I was an expensive writer comparatively to the other writers. And, they could hire multiple writers for what they were paying me. And they wanted to do that. And for me, if I'm not writing and performing, if that wasn't the opportunity anymore and it was just, only doing sketches, it wasn't as appealing as it was to me in seasons 1 and 2 where I was able to do that. So, I kind of thought, let me let somebody else take this slot who's going to be excited to be here and, just be a cast member as someone like myself who's, taking up, space on both ends of the puzzle. So, and, I was fortunate enough that by virtue of that, I was able to walk away and, and not have a bad ending to my Mad TV story.
What did you go to do after you left Mad? Did you go directly onto something else?
Yeah, I did an overall deal for myself, and then I immediately went and did 3 movies back to back. I think the first one was for Larry David. Larry David had just finished Seinfeld, and he was directing his first movie called Sour Grapes. So I went and did that. And then Quentin Tarantino and Robert Rodriguez they'd done their Dusk Till Dawn franchise, and they were getting ready to do a prequel and a sequel. So I got cast in that, and I went and shot that movie immediately. And then I got cast in another movie, again, sort of all on top of each other. And I went and did that. So, I kind of spent my first year shooting films, and then I jumped in and was, writing and producing, and, my feature career sort of took off. And that was, next thing I knew, I was doing Liberty Heights and Magnolia and, with Barry Levinson and Adrian Brody and all those folk, and then it was a different game, right? So suddenly you're at the Oscar parties, and you're in the award world, and that happened sort of very quickly based on a variety of sort of films. So by 2000 or so, I was really focused on the blockbuster side of things, Evolution and Time Machine and stuff like that. And just realizing what the parameters were with those type of films versus, the freedom I had on Mad TV to do the crazy stuff I was doing. And I missed it and wanted to get back to stuff that I felt was, less constrained by the economics of what those budgets cost and what they need to recruit globally, and, and what the ratings are. I got in trouble on The Replacements because I did a joke with Gene Hackman where I say, Coach, it looks like I just jacked off an elephant. And that was going to give us an R rating.
Oh.
So I thought a hilarious joke. Hackman and I were dying laughing, but, the studio was not happy with me because just based on that joke, we were about to get an R rating, and they fought it, and we managed to get a PG-13. But that's the difference between a considerable amount of revenue as to whether or not you get one rating or another, right? PG-13 movies make a lot more money. So just dealing with those sorts of components throughout, I was like, this is nuts.
And this all makes sense. And so I'm like a little sponge right now, and I'm absorbing everything that you're saying, because I'm like, this is so fascinating. And I would have never thought that it was like one joke that could move you to the next tier like that.
Yeah, I mean, and also, it's by virtue of who you're playing with. So that, you start to just so many things change. Keanu had done The Matrix. The Matrix had exploded. This movie was after The Matrix. We were doing The Replacements. We were in Baltimore Ravens football camp. So, just the whole notion of, 2 months before the movie starts, we're going to put the guys in football camp for 6 weeks, right? Mm-hmm. And get them ready for that. And, just the whole craziness of it. It was just a different time in the sort of Hollywood ecosystem. And, having gotten to do all of it, it was pretty crazy now that I look back at it.
So when you left Mad and all these years have gone by, did you keep anything from Mad TV? And if so, do you still have it?
The thing I normally keep is all my seat backs.
Okay.
From the director's chairs, I have all of those. I usually keep that. I think I have a mug, and I think I still have the original press shots of us.
Okay.
Maybe a couple of those. And And until it got stolen from me, I had a whole Mad TV Spy versus Spy thing signed by Sergio Aragonés that I got at the first Comic-Con that he took me to, because he took me to my first Comic-Con.
Because you were friends with him, right?
Well, I met him doing the show, and he came down, to the pilot and the whole thing. So I got to meet him, and I was, of course, very excited. And he mentioned Comic-Con and that he was going, and I didn't know what Comic-Con was. And he was like, "You love, this art. You should come to do Artist Alley with me." And I was like, "Okay." And so we drove down to San Diego, and I went to my first Comic-Con with him and walked Artist Alley and bought all sorts of stuff, and that I still have to this day. But yeah, I got sort of introduced to the magic of Comic-Con through him, and it was one of my great Hollywood memories is getting to do that with him.
So I'm going to skip ahead on a few questions just because of what you just said there, which
Okay.
I had a question when was like, "Hey, do you have anything you want to promote?" Like, you can full on promote. You have.
Well, I'm about to be back at San Diego Comic-Con, of course, at the meeting place of my one of my comic book idols. Like, you got to understand, Spy versus Spy was so hilarious to me because it encapsulated so much of what my day-to-day experience was, right? I'm a young black kid from the deep South. There's a black spy, there's a white spy, right? The two are always trying to one-up each other. I'm watching that play itself out in so many ways in my life. But it was just a game between the two of them, ultimately. I thought it was so poetic that it was captured and it was in this magazine, and it never had anything to do with anything political. It never said anything political, but it was so obvious to me what it was, and that he was able to convey that in that imagery so simply in a way that any kid picked it up. Me and my friends picked it up. My black friends picked it up. My white friends picked it up. We all got it. You know what I mean? My Asian friends, my Latino, everybody was like, bing, right? And we've joked about how it could expand by being in more colors, right? And that if you did the Benetton version of Spy versus Spy, you'd have all these other colors in the fight, right? And that was the joke of it. But so to be able to experience Comic-Con with him and meet all these other artists who I didn't know at the time, and get it, exposed to Millennium Comics and all that, and Reginald Hudlin and Dennis Cowan and all those guys. It was really sort of a magical experience for a nerdy kid like myself. So I'm going to be back there. Mad TV panel. I think
Mad Rewind. Mad Rewind.
Mad Rewind, but it's the cast of Mad TV, and we're rewinding Mad. So let's see. You've got
to do that for legal reasons.
Of course, but still. So I'm sure Nicole's coming, and I hope I get
Michael McDonald.
Oh,
Mo
Michael
Collins.
McDonald is magical. So is Mo Collins. I didn't even get a chance to work with them, so I'm just excited that this many, Mad TV people are going to be able to building at Mad Rewind.
Josh Myers.
Oh yes, Josh is coming through. I love it. Is Nicole Sullivan coming through?
Nicole Sullivan will be there. Deborah Wilson will be there.
Oh, the GOAT, Deborah Wilson. More Mad TV episodes than anybody. Wow.
And Blaine Capatch.
Yay. Okay, a lot of the crew. Blaine Capatch. Blaine Capatch was a writer at the time with Patton Oswalt. They were a writing team, and they worked together on the show. That's actually how I met them originally, was together as a writing duo. Yeah. And I remember Blaine wanting to. I remember Patton wanting to act, and how he's finally gotten that opportunity. He's so excited for him. I love Patton.
Yeah, but the panel, I can't say more at the moment because I'm playing by San Diego Comic-Con's rules.
Oh, that's right. We can't tell you where, right?
We can't say what date, what time, or what ballroom, but it's going to be incredible. And that's when I met you last year. Orlando was at San Diego Comic-Con.
That is
July
true.
26th. It was such an incredible panel, and we're going to do it again this year, and it's going to be bigger and better.
No doubt. That was a lot of fun. I spent the day with Phil Lamar and David Herman that day. They were running around doing Futurama and The Simpsons, and Matt was there, and he was drawing caricatures for anyone who asked a question in the Comic-Con line. So I got in that line.
Well, yeah, Sergio got into the Q&A line and blew some shit up. It was incredible.
A lot of fun. I mean, and also just I used to spend a lot of my days with Phil and David, so it was really a good time, and I got to see the absolutely magical and brilliant Alex Borstein. What a chameleon! I love her work so much. So yeah, we've spawned some greats, and I love the fact that we get to do Mad Rewind and talk about it, but also that we get to go to cons and see our fans. You know what I mean?
And I do see Alex every now and then, and so I am in the process of stalking her. I will get her on this podcast. I'm working.
Got to, and Will Sasso.
Working on Will too. There's lots of balls that are rolling in different directions. So, can you tell me? Do you have any advice for anyone starting out in comedy today?
Oh, wow. I mean, today people are just posting. I mean, that's just what it is. I mean, I clearly, you can do so vis-a-vis YouTube. So the metrics are there, the proof's in the pudding. So yeah, I mean, if you're a writer and stand up and you're shooting your sets and posting them up, I've seen several comedians really make a name for themselves utilizing YouTube. So I think that that's a premier way to do it, and there's no barrier to entry, right? There's there's nothing stopping you. So please, there's nothing I think can stop you. It's one of those things where if you really want to do it, you just kind of figure a way. And everybody has a different path, so it doesn't matter what story they tell you because that ain't your story. That's their story. So I try to be cautious about telling people what my story was because my story is so exclusive to me. Right. And what my skill sets were. And I had more than one skill set, so you might not be me. You might not be a chameleon in the way that I was, right? And you don't have to be. I mean, that's not even necessary. So it's most important for you to be you. And I think the advice I most give you is the most unique thing about you is you and your particular story. And if you stick to that, you'll be okay. And if you don't have that story yet, you'll have it later. I definitely remember feeling like, my parents are still married. I have no trauma to speak of. Like, I don't have, my story doesn't feel interesting compared to this person who, had no dad, or this person, who went through this, right? And I definitely, felt that. Like, man, my story is not very interesting in that way. And then I realized, oh, wow, most people didn't have that experience. Oh, your story is interesting in that it's not typical. And I was like, oh, well, but at the time I couldn't see it because I was so in envy of someone else's story that I often missed, I think, the magic within my own. So I encourage people to focus their attention heavily on themselves, their family, what's in their immediate circumference. You will often find the bones to the great comedy, stand-up story you're trying to tell in the relationships that are in front of you, not the relationships that you imagine.
And everything that you just said right there is going to resonate with somebody. And that is my goal. And so that is a perfect answer. So thank you so much for that. And do you have any parting words that you would like to say to fans of Mad TV?
Man, I don't. Thank you. I as a fan of Mad, magazine, and the excitement I had about being on, Mad TV was super genuine. It was, it's a lovely time, and it was a crazy moment in my life, but not one that I regret or think of negatively. I know not everyone of my castmates had the same sort of experience on the show, and that kind of makes me sad. Actually, I was fortunate and privileged in so many reasons and ways that, you know, I didn't have some of the negative experiences that they have. But I just feel like Mad TV represents such an extraordinary cast of talented people, like really, really, really talented people. And I don't think SNL has anything on us in terms of talent. I don't believe that at all. And I believe that the talent for Mad stretched so wide from that writer's room to, you know, the folks who in the post part of the process have gone on to be comedians, directors, writers, folks like yourself, you know, to birthing Key and Peele and, you know, all of that. Like, you know, I remember, you know, Michael Keaton coming to me saying, I need advice, man. What, you know, how have you been able to do different things, right? I just feel like, you know, there's some really special things about, you know, that, what it represents. So I'm just grateful to the fans that they stuck with it and somehow they got us. And we were definitely the weird kids. We weren't the Saturday Night Live kids or the State, you know, or any of those. We were kind of our own thing. And, you know, I wanted to do sketches that were super fast in 3 minutes, you know, and I got to do all that stuff as a writer. It's just, like I said, I had a great time. I'm so grateful to Quincy Jones and, you know, David Salzman and that whole crew who gave me that opportunity, you know, largely Quincy, because I know he's the person who really kind of handpicked me and put me on the show. God rest his soul. He was an awesome cat. So I really miss him.
Yeah. Where can fans of Mad TV find you on social media?
The Orlando Jones, I think, is what I am on just about everything. They give people stupid blue check marks these days, so I don't know what that's supposed to mean. But if you see a bunch of hashtags Trollando and a bunch of stupidity, that's you found me. That's the right guy.
Well, Orlando, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me.
Of course.
And you have become an inspiration to me, a buddy and a friend, ever since I met you in person on July 26th of 2025, which was the Mad Rewind panel at Comic-Con. And so you've become a big brother to me that I never had before, because you've had to listen to me cry about a lot of things. I'm like, it's so hard. It's hard.
It is hard. It is, but I love you so much. I feel like I've been really blessed to have this amazing group of fans. And so because of that, I don't think I've really been able to have a bad day in my life, because at some point somebody is, hey! And they're excited about whatever it is, you know, Drumline, American Gods, Sleepy Hollow, whatever, you know, whatever that is. But for me, it infuses my day with so much joy. And for you to sort of keep this, you know, Mad TV legacy alive and this sort of group of people and your time working on it for far longer than I did. I think you worked on it for like 9 years. I was on it for 2. And Deborah, who is a journeyman comedian who did it for so long, you know, for me, the least I can do is try and, you know, participate and shine a spotlight on the incredible talent that was on the show. And I just applaud you, because I think some of the most amazing stuff that happens because of fans. So thank you for being both a very talented and funny lady in your own right, but also for being a genuine and earnest, fan of our crazy show, Mad TV.
What? And now we have a panel next month. Woo, woo.
Right? 2 years in a row, baby. Hey, well,
I don't know. Yeah, may or may not be able to announce something amazing. Who knows? Fingers crossed. You know, next month. So we'll see. We'll see. But we are at the credit portion of the podcast. We have made it to the end of our journey. So Orlando, thank you so much for taking the time to come talk to me. And I just want to roll through this really quick, that Mad Rewind is recorded via the studio venue just south of fancy downtown Burbank. Please visit thestudiovenue.com for all of your podcast needs. Mad Rewind is produced by Dan Holden and Lily Romero. Engineered by Kyle and Teresa Tucker, edited by Kyle Tucker, and hosted and executive produced by me, Brandee Stillwell. Thank you so much for spending your time with us. We are a little train that could. I appreciate you because I know that you have other choices, other podcasts to listen to. So please like, subscribe, share, talk about us, hashtag us. Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Orlando. So much love. Can't wait to get a giant hug from you next month and for coming on the show. Thank you, everybody. I love you. XOXO. Thank you. Bye.
See you at Comic-Con.
Bye.
It's time for Mad Rewind, yeah, with your host, Brandee Stillwell.